There comes a moment in the quiet of your soul when you finally realize that pretending has a price. You smile when you're empty. You agree when you're suffocating. You laugh with people who make your spirit recoil. And somewhere between the masks and the mirrors, you disappear. Slowly, quietly, without a sound. Your real self gets buried alive under the weight of fitting in. But then it hits you. A single, devastating realization that changes everything. I would rather lose alone than win as someone I'm not. Not because solitude is noble, not because defeat is romantic, but because pretending is a form of spiritual suicide. Because selling your soul for applause feels like drinking poison just to toast with the crowd. The crowds, them, they who cheer today and condemn tomorrow. They who want you tamed, palatable, predictable. They don't want you to be real. They want you to be convenient. And so, from the moment you begin to wake up, you feel it to the tension. The war between your conditioned self and your original self. The person you've built to survive versus the person you were born to be. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But it's not a gift. It's not handed to you. It's a war. A daily revolt against everything in you that was shaped to please the world. And it begins with one decision. I refuse to betray myself to belong. This world will reward you for imitation. It will decorate the obedient. It will pay you to play a role and punish you for being raw. But make no mistake, every ounce of power, peace, and self-respect you'll ever earn will come from choosing truth over approval. Let them misunderstand you. Let them laugh. Let them call you difficult. Let them call you arrogant. Because the minute you stop living for the mirror of their validation, you finally start building your own. And there is no mirror clearer than the one made of your own self-respect. You see, what most people call success is often just a well-decorated prison, gold-plated chains, a perfect performance, a hollow, exhausting high. But authenticity? Authenticity is brutal, it's raw, it's lonely, it strips you down to the bone, but it's also freedom. And freedom is not comfortable. Freedom is not applause. Freedom is cold nights and silent mornings and walking away from the crowd, not because you hate them, but because you finally love yourself enough to stop chasing their shadows. There is a sacred rebellion inside every real one, a divine stubbornness that whispers, I will not edit myself to be accepted. I will not betray my soul to be loved. I will not become a caricature of myself for comfort. And that's when you begin to transform. Not change, transform. Change is surface. Transformation is seismic. You don't just become confident, you remember who the hell you were before the world got its hands on you. Because you weren't born to be liked. You were born to be real. To walk like you mean it. To speak like it matters. To act like your existence is not an accident, but a declaration. That's the fire they fear in you. Not your rage, not your intellect, not your ambition, but your refusal to wear the mask. Your unwillingness to kneel at the altar of conformity. Your silent, holy war against the tyranny of people-pleasing. Because when you stop needing their love to feel worthy, you become untouchable. And yes, you will lose people. You will lose opportunities. You will lose illusions. But what you gain is yourself. And there is no win greater than not being at war with your own soul. That's what they don't tell you about authenticity. It costs. It costs relationships built on false versions of you. It costs jobs that require your silence. It costs invitations to rooms where masks are mandatory. But it rewards you with peace. A kind of peace so rare it feels like rebellion. Imagine waking up and not needing to perform, not needing to monitor your every word, not needing to shrink your truth into palatable sound bites. That's not arrogance, that's liberation, that's sovereignty. And in a world that profits from your doubt, loving yourself as you are is an act of revolution. You see, there is no medal for being liked by everyone, but there is a death, a slow one, for abandoning your soul to keep the peace. So ask yourself, whose opinion is worth more than your truth? Whose acceptance is worth more than your integrity? Whose applause is worth more than your peace? Because the moment you choose to live in alignment with your own essence, you stop chasing the crowd. And when you stop chasing the crowd, you finally start hearing the voice inside that's been buried under years of noise. That voice is not gentle, is not soft. It doesn't care if you're liked. It's primal, it's sacred, it's you. And it's been waiting for you to stop editing, stop apologizing, stop twisting yourself into a socially acceptable shape. Because every time you choose comfort over truth, you lose a piece of yourself. And one day, the cost becomes too great. One day, you wake up and don't recognize the person in the mirror, because the real you has been caged under layers of performance. But it doesn't have to end like that. You can choose today to walk away from the crowd and walk back to yourself. Yes, the path is lonelier. Yes, the winds take longer. Yes, the world will try to shame you back into obedience. But what you gain is a life that feels like home. Because when you'd rather lose alone than win, as someone you're not, you're no longer playing their game. You've built your own, and that's where your real power begins. They won't understand it first. They'll say, you've changed, that you're cold, that you're distant, that you become difficult to love. But what they're really saying is that you become difficult to control. Because when you rise from the ashes of who they told you to be, you start speaking a language they no longer understand, the language of boundaries, of sovereignty, of self-honor. And make no mistake, you will be tested. Every time you say no to what once enslaved you, every time you walk away from a toxic comfort, every time you choose to stand alone in truth rather than kneel in company, you'll feel it. The pull to go back, the temptation to soften, the ache of isolation. But that ache, that hollow, raw ache in your chest when you choose yourself, that is not pain, that is your rebirth. Because this world is not set up for the sovereign. It is engineered for obedience, for compromise, for compliance. And yet, here you are, still rising, still choosing fire over facade, still choosing soul over script. Because even if your path is steep, even if your steps are bloody, there's something in you ancient and indestructible that refuses to kneel. That is your true self. The one who cannot be purchased, packaged, or persuaded. The one who speaks in silence, moves in shadows, and knows that being real in a world of illusions is the rarest kind of victory. You see, when you choose authenticity, you lose the world's version of winning, but you gain something infinitely greater, self-possession. And self-possession is not arrogance. It is not defiance for the sake of rebellion. It is the quiet, unshakable knowing that you do not owe the world a diluted version of your truth. You do not owe them comfort at the expense of your clarity. You do not owe them agreement at the expense of your voice. You do not owe them your smile if your soul is screaming. This isn't about being rude. This isn't about pride. This is about spiritual survival. Because every time you compromise your essence to keep the peace, you create a war inside. And eventually that war breaks you. Quietly, slowly, fatally. But when you choose to lose on your own terms with your integrity intact, your heart unedited, your soul unsold, you don't actually lose. You reclaim. You reclaim time. You reclaim peace. You reclaim your damn name. And that's when you become dangerous. Not loud, not aggressive, dangerous. Because a person who no longer fears rejection is a person who cannot be manipulated. A person who has tasted the power of solitude is a person who cannot be coerced. A person who knows the price of betrayal, especially betrayal of self, is a person who would rather burn in truth than bloom in deceit. And that's what they'll never understand. You didn't choose the hard road because you wanted to suffer. You chose it because the easy road was killing you. They gave you a script. You lit it on fire. They gave you a box. You shattered it. They gave you a role. You rewrote the damn play. And now they call you difficult, arrogant, cold. But you are not cold. You are clear. And clarity feels like frostbite to those addicted to confusion, to those who live in compromise, to those who sold their voice so long ago. They now worship the noise. But you are done with noise. You have sat in silence. You have looked yourself in the mirror without flinching. You have tasted the agony of being misunderstood and still chosen not to bend. And that is your liberation. Because when you'd rather be alone with your truth than surrounded by people who only love your mask, you are finally free. Not free in the way the world defines it, with riches, with followers, with applause, but free in the soul, free in the marrow, free in the moments when no one's watching and you still feel peace. You didn't just lose, you escaped. And now you walk differently, not with arrogance, but with gravity, with weight, with a kind of presence that doesn't beg to be seen because it knows it cannot be ignored. That's what happens when you stop chasing validation. You become it, and people will feel it. In your silence, in your gaze, in the way you no longer explain yourself to be understood. Because when you finally understand yourself, when you've looked into your own abyss and returned whole, there is no crowd, no applause, no title that can seduce you again. You have become what they fear most, a soul that cannot be owned. And while they sell pieces of themselves for relevance, you will build a kingdom from the ruins of every mask you ever burned. A kingdom of one, built on truth, ruled by presence, and protected by the fire of your own becoming. And what they'll never tell you, what no one dares to admit, is that becoming this version of yourself is terrifying. Not for you, for them. Because once you make peace with being alone, you become immune to their games. They can't bait you with attention, can't trap you with guilt, can't seduce you back into the performance. You've tasted something stronger than validation alignment. And the taste of alignment is addictive, not in a frantic, chaotic way, but in a slow, steady burn like fire in the chest, like truth in your bones. It turns you into someone dangerous, not because you dominate others, but because you no longer need them to feel whole. This is the inner revolution, where winning is redefined, where success is no longer applause, but authenticity, where love is no longer about acceptance, but resonance. And in this new terrain, you learn how to lose, not as a victim, but as a warrior. You lose the friends who loved your silence more than your truth. You lose the jobs that praised your obedience more than your vision. You lose the relationships that needed you small to feel big. But you gain you. The you that's been buried under years of yes when your soul was screaming no. The you that kept playing peacekeeper while your fire begged to be seen. The you that smiled on the outside while dying in the dark. And that resurrection, that emergence from self-denial, it is violent. You don't gently step into your power. You erupt into it. You shatter. You bleed. You burn. But you do not break. Because this path of radical self-honor is not for the faint. It is for those who are willing to be misunderstood. It is for those who can stomach solitude. It is for those who would rather walk the desert alone than drown in a sea of inauthenticity. And when you reach that point, that sacred point where your truth is louder than their approval, you become unstoppable. Not because you've conquered the world, but because you conquered yourself. And in that conquest, you find a stillness that cannot be shaken. Because now, when people ask who you are, you don't offer a resume, a title, a performance. You offer presence, raw, unfiltered, undiluted. You offer truth, not for their comfort, but for your freedom. And that truth, that inner clarity, it cuts through illusion like a blade. It purifies every room you enter, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you become someone who doesn't need to. You are no longer for everyone. And that's not your weakness, that's your liberation. Because the version of you that was for everyone was a ghost, a hollow echo of expectations, a beautiful lie built on broken agreements with yourself. But this version is rooted, grounded, untouched by flattery, unmoved by fear. And now you move different. You speak slower, not out of hesitation, but precision. You say no faster, not out of anger, but clarity. You choose peace over attention, solitude over noise, depth over popularity. Because winning, to you, is no longer about more, it's about truth. And truth doesn't always win in the world's eyes, but it always wins in the soul. And when your soul wins, the world loses its grip. You're no longer hypnotized by promises of fame. You're no longer seduced by being liked. You're no longer addicted to their yes, because you've said yes to yourself. A louder, deeper, unshakable yes. And that yes is not polite, it is not diplomatic, it is not interested in being palatable, it is primal, sacred, ferocious. It rises from the depths of who you were before the world taught you who to be. It is the roar of a soul remembering its name. And when you walk into the world with that yes pulsing in your chest, people will notice. They'll feel it in your silence, in your eyes, in your unwillingness to bend, because there's nothing more powerful than a human being who has remembered who they are and decided never to forget again. And once you've remembered who you are, once you've stepped back into the raw gravity of your true self, there is no going back. You can't unsee it. You can't pretend that the room doesn't feel fake. You can't unhear the silence when your spirit is being dismissed. You can't unknow the pain of betraying your own voice just to make someone else comfortable. And so you stop. You stop laughing at jokes that mock your values. You stop smiling through conversations that drain your energy. You stop offering pieces of yourself to people who treat your presence like it's disposable. You don't do it to be righteous. You do it to breathe. Because at some point, survival becomes suffocation. And when you start choosing air, real, pure, soul-giving air, you become dangerous to those still living on performance. They'll say you've become difficult, elitist, self-absorbed. But what they're really saying is this: you no longer tolerate your own erasure, because that's what this game has always been about, erasure. Every compromise, every bite of your tongue, every moment you said yes when you meant no, was another chip away at your core, another silent betrayal of your spirit. But now, you've called it by name. You've named the cost. You've counted the toll. And you've made a vow. No more. No more shrinking to fit. No more nodding to belong. No more wearing a smile like a muzzle. You've traded the comfort of the herd for the weight of your own crown. And it's heavy. Don't let them lie to you. Authenticity is not light. It demands everything. Your illusions, your addictions, your coping mechanisms. It demands you shed every mask, every performance, every false identity that kept you safe. And in return, it gives you something rare, something most will never taste. Wholeness. not happiness, not perfection, not the illusion of control, but wholeness, the raw, unfiltered reality of being aligned, of knowing in every cell that you are no longer a stranger in your own skin. You're not chasing, you're not performing, you're not negotiating your worth. You are, and that are is enough, even when it's alone, even when it's misunderstood, even when the room goes quiet because your truth disrupted the illusion. That silence, that pause after you speak your truth and no one knows what to say, that's power. That's when you know you've stopped echoing and started resonating. And let them be uncomfortable. Let them wrestle with your clarity. Let them stare while you walk out of rooms no longer meant for you, because you don't belong in places that require the death of your truth. You don't belong in dynamics where love is conditional. You don't belong in conversations where honesty is betrayal. You don't belong in systems that reward you for being a copy. You belong where your soul breathes, where your silence is respected, not filled, where your presence is honored, not tolerated, where your truth is not feared, but invited. And sometimes that place is not a crowd, not a room, not a relationship. Sometimes that place is you, your own presence, your own solitude, your own fire. And from that fire you begin to build not a persona, not a brand, not a product, but a foundation, one made of conviction, of boundaries forged in truth, of choices carved from self-respect. And now you don't ask, will they accept me? You ask, does this reflect who I truly am? And that shift, that sacred shift from seeking to choosing, is the moment you reclaim everything they tried to make you forget. Because you were never too much. You were just too real for those still hiding from themselves. And when you'd rather lose alone than win as someone you're not, you are no longer a player in their game. You are the storm that rewrites the rules. So here we are, at the edge of everything you used to be and everything you're becoming. No more hiding. No more softening your edges to be digestible. No more apologizing for a soul that refused to die quietly. Because now you know you are not here to be everyone's favorite. You are not here to be understood by those who abandoned their own becoming. You are not here to win a game designed to enslave your essence. You are here for something greater. You are here to walk the unpaved road, the road of the real, the road of the raw, the road where truth is your only compass and your soul is your only home. And yes, it will cost you. It will cost comfort. It will cost convenience. It will cost you the cheap sugar rush of being liked for what you're not. But it will reward you with everything they never told you was possible. Peace that doesn't need permission. Power that doesn't need performance. Presence that doesn't need validation. Because when you'd rather lose alone than win someone you're not, you've already won. You've won the war they never saw coming, the war within. And now your path is clear. No more masks. No more pleasing. No more pretending. You will speak like every word matters. You will walk like every step is sacred. You will live like your truth is law. And to those still trapped in performance, your presence will disturb them. Let it. To those who feed on compliance, your boundaries will enrage them. Let them. To those who only love you when you shrink your wholeness, will expose them. Let it. Because you are not here to be convenient. You are not here to be a mirror of their comfort. You are not here to be edited into their expectations. You are here to be fully, unapologetically, uncompromisingly. And now the choice is yours. Keep wearing the costume and living their lie, or burn it all down and live in the truth of your becoming. But remember this, There is no safety in the crowd. There is no salvation in performance. There is no peace in pretending. There is only you, and that is enough. So rise, not to be admired, not to be accepted, but to be undeniably yourself. Because when the world sees someone who cannot be bought, cannot be broken, and cannot be bent into something false, they don't see rebellion. They see freedom. And freedom real, holy, terrifying freedom always begins the same way. With one soul, standing alone, unafraid to lose everything that isn't real.